There we go. Now it's on.
All right. We're in business.
The City of Selma Planning Commission for October 27th, 2018 is now in session. All rise for the flag salute, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Morales, would you do roll call for us, please?
I'll go ahead and turn it over to Vino. He can go ahead and give a roll call.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me for my first time. Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez? Here. Commissioner Sermian? Absent. Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Singh? Absent. And Trujillo? Commissioner Garcia? Here. And Chairman Niswander.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your phones and pagers on mute. First phone that goes off buys the beer and pizza after the meeting. Political conflicts of interest. Any commissioner who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter. Oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Item number 1, consent calendar. And this is to consider and approve the June 25th Planning Commission meeting, the minutes. I'll take a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from June 25th.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Under public hearings, Municipal Code Amendment MC number 2018-01, consideration of a resolution to the Planning Commission of the City of Selma, California, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance adopting Chapter 35 to Title 11 of the Selma Municipal Code, accessory dwelling units in residential zones, and amending Chapter 11-1-1 zoning definitions, purpose of Title 11 zoning of the Selma Municipal Code to add definitions related to accessory dwelling units and notice of exemption regarding same. Since this is a new item for not only the city, but also for this commission. By the way, before I go any further, I'd like to introduce Jamie Costco. He's our new attorney representing or counseling the planning commission. Richard Walker is our new city planner. And Isaac Morales in the teal colored shirt is our acting city manager.
Morenas, for the record.
Stand up and take a bow. Okay, since this is a new item for both the city and the planning commission, I apologize if we seem a little slow, but we're gonna go over this almost line by line because it's completely new to everybody. So, Richard, do you wanna walk us through this?
Certainly, this was prepared for a number of reasons, primarily based on the state legislature's model, which was originally AB 229, which evolved into AB 2299 and SB 1069. This ordinance is mandated by the state, and its objective is to provide opportunities to construct accessory dwelling units in appropriately zoned properties within local government jurisdictions. And it is the local government's responsibility to create an ordinance to implement the objectives of AB 2299. And we are at this stage because not only has the state legislature imposed this on the City of Selma, but also because there is a frequent inquiry and a noticeable local demand for this type of ordinance to be in place. So the law firm of Sparks and Casso, along with the city planning department, crafted the draft ordinance for the accessory dwelling units for the planning commission's consideration as well as public input. And while the format and outline of the ordinance is based on the state legislature model, the local government has the right and the liberty to enhance certain criteria specific to the city's needs. So at this time, we're soliciting input from the public and from the planning commission so that we can prepare a final draft for planning commission approval and city council adoption.
One of my questions is, are these ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or auxiliary dwelling units, are these limited, when this subject was first broached, are these limited strictly to these cargo containers like you see on seagoing ships? Or is it more of, we hear a lot nowadays about mini houses and this kind of thing. Does that also fall in this category?
It does not. The criteria, as far as the state legislature model, identifies health and safety code, and there's one other code reference. The proposed unit has to meet housing and community development standards as a residential unit. The cargo containers, unless they meet the state legislature and HCD requirements as a housing unit, then they would not qualify. If by chance they do, they could qualify, but would still have to meet the remaining criteria of the ordinance in order to be qualified as an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, I know in some instances, Fig Garden for one, they won't allow an auxiliary unit on the lot if it has a kitchen. However, what's in this verbiage here states that it does have to have some kind of place to fix food.
It has to be a self-sustaining housing unit that meets all the criteria of the state and the local government. Its purpose is to enable properties with adequate lot size, to intensify their property with an additional unit. And it should be noted that the unit is not restricted to occupancy by family members, but can be rented. However, it needs to maintain ownership by the owner of the primary residence on the property. So, yes, the objective here is to create an ordinance which will allow the intensification of single-family lots which will allow for a secondary self-sustained habitable dwelling unit.
Here's another question. I put one of these in my backyard. Everything's hunky-dory. Commissioner Gonzalez comes by and makes a offer on my property that's just too good to walk away from. However, he's not gonna live in that property. It's not gonna be his primary residence. So at that point in time, when escrow closes, is he responsible for getting rid of this auxiliary dwelling, or does he just board it up, or what? How does that work? Because as I've read through here, one of the criteria is that the primary residence has to be, the owner has to live in the primary residence.
Right, and if there is a transfer of ownership, the new owner has the option to continue the lease with the existing tenant or vacate the existing tenant, rent it to a new tenant, or leave the unit vacant. It's the same ownership principles for the accessory unit as the primary unit.
But if he
Even if
chooses, if he chooses, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
if
no.
he chooses to rent the primary residence out, it becomes a rental home.
Right.
What happens to the auxiliary?
The auxiliary unit will maintain its lease under the ownership. The owner of the property is not required to occupy the primary unit, only required to own,
Oh,
not occupy, but
I
own.
Yeah, I thought it said
misunderstood that.
must occupy either the primary or
Yeah, that was.
the ADU.
Mr. Chairman,
Right.
if I
Yes.
may,
Or one of the two.
if you turn to page, I believe it's 5, page 3 rather, I'm sorry,
Is there a number?
8, subsection D8, deed restriction required, if the accessory dwelling unit shall be considered legal only so long as the primary residence or the second dwelling unit, the ADU, is occupied by the owner of record of the property. So if you were to sell it to Commissioner Gonzalez, and he was not going to occupy either the ADU or the primary residence, then the ADU would no longer be able to function as a rental or a living unit.
Okay, that was my question.
And that is a deed restriction that is required to be recorded against the property so that the entire world knows of that restriction. And that's set forth in state law.
So,
I think Mr. Walker thought that Commissioner Gonzalez was actually going to live in the house. That's where he
Yeah.
came from.
so basically a landlord who has several single-family residences, let's say here in Selma, they cannot go and put a second unit in the backyard and rent it as well, or can they?
Unless they're occupying the property as the owner of
he's
record, they
he's
would
the
not be able to
landlord,
do that.
basically.
No.
He has 10 rentals in
Right.
Selma, and he wants to make them now duplexes, for example, with
It's a very good
using
question,
that.
but they would not be permitted to do that under this particular ordinance.
So it becomes a code enforcement issue?
Well, first of all, they would come to the counter here and they would submit to seek a permit to build the property, and they would have to basically represent whether they live on the property or not. And at that point, they would be told, I'm sorry, you cannot build this particular unit as an ADU unit. There may be other provisions of the zoning code which would allow it if in fact it's multifamily. It's a multifamily zoned property. But in this instance here, these are dealing with single family zoned properties, so wouldn't be able to do it under this.
So if they're less
ordinance.
than honorable owners,
Right.
is there any kind of way to,
It is
fix
my
that issue?
understanding, Commissioner, that there are no less than honorable owners in the city of Selma. But should there be one or two, then yes, it would be a code enforcement issue. It would be an issue that building and safety would
Okay.
step in and stop.
And what if an owner originally purchased the property as an owner occupied and took their loan as owner occupied, put the accessory dwelling unit in the back, rented it? A year later, they changed their mind, moved out, bought, upgraded, or maybe moved to another city, rented the front and the back still under a lease. What happens?
Well, you would have you would have a piece of property that is no longer compliant with the ordinance, and so again, code enforcement would have to take action of some sort to fix that problem.
But a
I
tenant has a
understand.
valid 1-year lease remaining, for example. I mean, what would you do with that tenant? The owner moved out today. They renewed their lease for a year, rented the front, so now both units are rented. It's not the tenant's fault.
You're absolutely
So
right.
what do
And-
we do with those tenants?
And the function of this statute from the state level is to provide affordable housing to those that can't find it here in the state of California. I would assume at that point we would have to work something out with the individuals. We certainly wouldn't want to be kicking people out into the street.
Right.
I don't think that the city of Selma is interested in doing that. However, we're also interested in balancing the interests of ensuring that owners of property and occupants of property are compliant with local, state, and federal laws. So we would have to cross that bridge. As I recall, the state law did not specifically address that issue occurring. I think the legislature, in their efforts, foresaw that members of, the owners of property were going to comply with the law and not
Well,
engage
and-
in what you're doing.
But that's an issue. There's
What
a
you
shortage
suggested.
of rentals everywhere.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And when we're going to ask a tenant who has a peace of mind thinking he has a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, I'm not sure how long it's going to be, telling them, oh, sorry, the owner in the front moved out, so now you're going to have to move out as well. And they're going to be like, well, you can't make me. Let's go to court over this. I have a lease. I don't have a place to go. That's just a disaster if they don't address it up front.
It certainly would be something that the city may have to seek remedies against the property owner, not necessarily against the tenant. And then the property owner would be liable possibly to any damages suffered by the tenant.
So are we going to inform the property owners that if at any point they move out of that front unit, they better have not renewed a lease for a tenant in the back? I mean, give them heads up front before they put that accessory dwelling unit?
I think that that's fair to advise them that if the property is not owner occupied, then the function of the ADU ceases to be legal under both the ordinance and under state law.
Okay.
And we would address that issue as it comes.
And one last question. When we add those, are they going to require additional parking?
Well, that's with regard to parking. The ADU law, it permits off-street parking to be in tandem with the use of the unit, and there are some other restrictions. If you look here on page 4, I believe it is, it sets forth the parking requirements under E9, and it sets forth that in addition to parking spaces required for the primary residence, at least one off-street parking space shall be provided for each ADU, which may be provided as tandem parking in an existing driveway. And then there are some other issues there, depending on how close the property is to public transit, and public transit can be just a bus stop. It deals with architecturally and historically significant historic districts. Primarily, what the legislature did is some have said they punted on the parking issue, and they basically said, we'll just let the unit be built and they can park out on the street or tandem in the driveway. Some driveways, obviously, for homes that were built back in the 50s and 60s, you've got a one-shot, one-car driveway, and tandem
Right.
parking in the driveway is not possible. Back in those days, most families had one vehicle.
Right.
Now we have, families with 4 or 5 occupants in the house, and they've got 4 or 5 vehicles. So there will be an impact within the neighborhood, but the legislature's kind of punted on that issue.
I guess what we're trying to figure out here is some kind of language that is entirely understandable at first glance, that if you, the owner, are not living in the primary dwelling, if you're a tenant living in the primary dwelling, then there is no such thing as an auxiliary unit for rent. How can we make that? What kind of verbiage can we put in there that makes it clear that if you sell your house and buy the one across the street and put a tenant in your old house, then the auxiliary unit is no longer a rental?
My understanding of the objective of the Senate bill and the Assembly bill, basically the state legislature model with respect to securing a building permit to construct an ADU, that can only be secured by the owner of the property.
Right.
Okay, that part's clear. Now, if the property ownership transfers, the new legal owner of record incurs that ADU ownership, meaning the new owner of record is eligible to continue the lease to the new owner. With respect to the existing owner who owns the main single family and the legally permitted ADU, the issue of leasing out the main dwelling and not occupying the main dwelling, how that may disqualify the legality of the ADU is unclear to me. We will run that to ground, but my reading of the objective is that only the property owner is eligible to secure the approvals to construct the ADU.
Right.
The leasing thereafter is,
Well, now we got the ADU up and built,
right,
and I decide I want to sell the primary dwelling.
yes,
No, I don't want to sell it. I want to rent it
Right.
out.
right.
So as the original owner of the property, it's still in my name, it's still okay to rent both units, the primary and the secondary?
I will have to confirm whether the state legislature would
No.
allow the local government to permit that.
I think that needs to be addressed
Mis-
at the time that.
Well,
they
as a
apply for
realtor,
the
when you,
permit to build.
as a realtor, well, they're only gonna pull permit to build the thing, and once it's built, that's what I'm talking
That's when
about.
the owner needs to be informed. If you ever sell your property and, or rent your property out,
What if an investor buys it?
the
Non-owner
the owner,
occupant, he's
the owner
thinking,
needs
I'm
to
getting
know that
two
before he
units.
rents his property out. The owner needs to know,
I think
it's
we
only
got
one
a,
resident that you have in there. You can't use the other one, but
I
they need
think
to
we
know
got a
that
black hole here.
initially.
Important
Mr.
When
point.
they
Chairman.
first apply for that ADU.
If you turn to page 3 of the ordinance, section D8, 8C in particular, it says the accessory dwelling unit shall be considered legal only so long as either the primary or second dwelling unit is occupied by the owner of record of the property. So at that point, in the example you provided, it would be determined that the ADU is no longer a legal conforming unit. And that's where, again, as we've previously discussed, code enforcement, city steps in and discusses with the owner of record the challenges that they have. And I understand that point that Commissioner Corey raised about kicking somebody out. And that's one of the challenges that wasn't necessarily addressed by the state law, how to deal with that. But we put on our books that it's only legal so long as one of the 2 units is occupied by the owner of record.
Well, City of Selma's code enforcement, and it's no reflection on them, they're just overwhelmed and understaffed. How are we gonna make sure
Yeah,
that
how are they
the
gonna
letter of the law is
enforce it?
being followed? It seems to me that the city is gonna be involved in eventually will be involved in a policing action that almost borders on invasion of privacy. So I'm really concerned if we're gonna have some of these rules, we're already seeing holes in this thing before it even gets off the first tee.
Mr. Chairman, you've raised some very valid points and you've raised some valid questions. The challenge local communities have is the legislature has deemed this an important policy issue at the state level, and unfortunately, they provide us limited opportunities to be able to regulate this. And so we do our best to try to regulate it, and then they basically say everything else falls into your ability to enforce your code, and essentially the hope that folks are going to abide by state law and local law. But you point out that there will be challenges, sir. There very well may be challenges, rather.
Now, I have one more question, please. For gated communities that have HOAs, or for maybe communities where there's CC&Rs recorded and the developer is clear on saying no adding buildings to the back, if it's a high-end community, they don't want to see this. So is this going to take over, or the CC&Rs will take over? Can they say, no, you cannot put one in this particular property or in a gated community where they're trying to keep it certain aesthetics? I mean, I'm not sure, certain looks to the development. How would that work?
The ADU itself has to comply with general plan and zoning designations within the city and the other restrictions that may be imposed on a piece of property, such as a CC&R. So I would suggest that in your example of an HOA, it would, if they are not permitted, then they wouldn't be able to build it under the state law or under this ordinance as we've drafted it.
Any other questions or comments?
I had a question about C, the density calculation. If somebody maxed out the number of square feet they could of their footprint on their lot, they could still have one of these ADUs, even though it causes them to exceed their density. Is that am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, but they also have to comply with setback requirements, fire safety requirements, and there's a possibility that the overall compliance issues, they may not be able to comply with those requirements itself, and it would be denied as a result of the size of the primary unit and the ability to build an accessory unit.
That might not be the case if the building is a 2-story. They might still, so basically.
Then it wouldn't affect the footprint though, because the
Right.
footprint would likely be
Lot coverage.
lot coverage wouldn't be affected. The
So if
size.
they're-
What the way that this is drafted right now is that the accessory dwelling unit cannot exceed 50% of the size of the primary unit, or in excess of 1,200 square feet. As I understand it, most homes here in the city of Selma are somewhere probably between 1,500 to 2,500 square feet in size. And so you've got no unit would be, if it's 2,500 square feet, the largest it could be would be 1,200 square feet in size, assuming that it's obviously under the 50%.
But if-
Most units are about 800 square feet on average throughout the state of California.
Right. If the city says, okay, you can build 40% on your lot, and you have a 5,000 square foot home, but a 2,500 footprint because it's a 2-story, then you still have enough space. Let's say you have a 10,000 square foot backyard. So you could still put one though, even though you have a 5,000 square foot home.
Arguably.
Up to 1,200 feet.
Richard, on a little different angle here, what type of foundation is going to be required for these units?
It is expected, based on the square footage, that it would be a simple slab foundation. That's the expectation. It depends on the unit selection of the applicant. There are a number of prefab homes that meet the criteria for housing and community development as far as accessible dwelling units are concerned. So the applicant has a variety of options to select from. In fact, even Tough Shed has a structure that it qualifies under HCD as a habitable qualifying accessory dwelling unit, which is placed on a very basic slab foundation. So slab would be the expectation, and because this is an intensifying infill type of housing solution, we are not expecting any type of footings and poured concrete and retaining walls and things of this nature. It is expected to be the most simple, straightforward, cost-effective infill type of housing solution imaginable. And sorry to elaborate with respect to the density calculation, the ADU is targeted for R1 zone properties only, single-family home zone properties, meaning only existing single-family homes on single-family lots. Therefore, by adding the ADU, we're not changing the density from 1 unit per lot to 2 units per lot. It doesn't calculate towards the density calculation. But even with the addition of the ADU, the lot itself still has to meet the development standards for the R1 zone.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, there's an architectural design requirement that the ADU unit be compatible with the existing primary unit located on the site.
And that determination would be made at your level when they come in for permit?
We will be reviewing the plans. This is a ministerial approval. We will be reviewing the plans, but there will not be a discretion, unless there's a discretionary action associated with the ADU request, such as a variance or a minor modification, it will not be presented to your board for consideration. Having said that, our departments will review for compliance with the ADU ordinance criteria.
As far as roof pitch goes, it said it has to match the existing dwelling. Does it have to match the same style, like if it's a hip roof or if it's gable, or can they do a shed with the same pitch?
No, we are very objective and aware of the objective of this ordinance, which is to facilitate additional units on appropriately sized lots to enable additional dwelling options for properties that can accommodate them. Having said that, we're not asking for a recreation of the 16th century Cape Cod, that's the main dwelling, as their accessory unit. That's not going to be the expectation.
Okay.
But would they at least require to maybe stucco it or put some wood siding on the outside, do some sort of pitch on the roof and maybe paint it the color of the front house or something?
There will be criteria in place to ensure compliance, but the objective, once again, with that design criteria is to prevent a boxcar from being placed in the backyard and utilized as an accessory dwelling unit.
Right, we just don't want them to stick out like a sore thumb in, in nice neighborhoods just because one neighbor decided to put one of these in the backyard and everybody else is looking at an eyesore.
That's right, we were intending to do it properly, that's correct.
The setbacks, they're gonna come under fire because some of these lots, there's no way they're gonna be able to maintain the setback from the back property line without a variance of some sort, I imagine. Is this gonna be determined on a individual basis?
It will be, each application will be reviewed for all applicable criteria. However, as this ordinance evolves and is finalized and adopted, it will be clear that there are certain lots in the R1 zone that are much more appropriate to accommodate an accessory dwelling unit than others. And the applicants of the owners of those lots are whom we expect to see applying for these ADUs.
Right. And then I guess maybe I'm getting too far ahead here, but this is a concern of mine because some of the areas these people are gonna wanna put these units in, I think the only way to get it in the backyard is to hire a crane and pick it up and swing it over somebody's house.
Well, having
Is
said
that,
that,
is that gonna create any, nightmares on down the road?
I don't foresee it because there, as I was explaining before, there are so many options with respect to prefab manufactured homes, several of which are assembled on the site within a day. And the applicant has a variety of options to choose from, and I would not expect any applicant to select the most difficult and absurd when there are so many other
Right.
options available.
Okay, so that's gonna be taken into account at the time of application too, right?
Oh, of course, of
All right.
course.
Okay,
And options will be provided to the applicant.
I see. And I'm assuming that a lot of these ADUs, the price structure is probably from A to Z as far as what's it gonna cost completed. Now, is each unit gonna have to have its own sewer hookup and its own water hookup?
Connection, yes.
Okay, to the existing dwelling or its own independent?
It would depend on the existing connection for the existing single-family home, and it would be a determination made by SKF as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
This draft complies with the state requirements, correct?
So what
Yes,
we're seeing
Commissioner.
here right now will fly at the state and federal level.
At state level, it follows the model ordinance that was a result of AB 2299 and its companion Senate bill.
Okay, any other comments from staff?
I do have one more question regarding the foundations for these. You said they're just simple slabs, so they're not considered permanent structures?
Oh,
on
they
the
are,
property?
yeah, yes, they
They
are.
are? With no, it's just a slab, no footing to keep it in place, no load bearing, nothing in it?
Well, there's not
Underneath
much of a load to bear. These are
Well, these-
prefab, lightweight, assembled
Well,
on-site
if you
units.
get one of those containers, they're pretty,
We do not foresee a container
Okay.
qualifying.
well, that's what brought all of this up, right? Somebody trying to put one of those
Yeah.
Right.
converted containers into a backyard someplace. So
Right, and we,
if that does happen, that goes on just a flat slab, nothing making it permanent structure attached to the ground, nothing.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, whatever structure is going to go on a property, number one, it's got to be compatible with the existing unit, but number two, it has to comply with all local building code requirements. So if it's such a structure that it would require footings and a slab or a raised foundation, if you will, then that would be something that
The city
building
enforce-
would-
Building would enforce.
would
Okay.
be a part of that. They have to comply with our local building codes.
Well, and there might also be some insurance issues to be dealt with as far as how permanent do you make
Permanent,
it?
yeah, that, the permanency of this,
Yeah.
uh, structure is what I
Okay.
don't know where we're gonna land with that. I mean, where does that go with it not being permanent? Slabs, that, I don't consider, tough shed is a permanent structure on a piece of property.
Can they attach them directly to the existing house, like sharing a common wall?
They say
Well,
they're able to do that.
For example, someone may very well convert a garage to an ADU unit, and the
Okay.
garage is attached to the primary residence. Yes.
And once they do it with permit, does that square footage gets added to the house for like tax purposes, or basically when we pull tax records, is it gonna show that the house increased by, let's say, 800 square feet? If they added an ADU, that's an additional 800 square feet?
I would assume that when someone comes in here and files for a building permit, the county assessor is advised, and they will reassess the property based on the improvement to the property.
Okay.
That's correct. All permits that are pulled are actually uploaded to the county itself or sent to the county for any kind of permitting structures at all, so they can be reassessed. So if they pull a
So
permit for
when
this
we-
type of structure, the county itself will get copies of the permit.
So when we pull title on a property, is it gonna show this is a single-family residence with an ADU attached to it?
It should, because of the assessor's office reassessing because of it.
Okay.
But also there will be a notice on there also recorded with regard to the requirements of it being owner occupied.
So for that instance, you'd get the title because of that. They're filing directly on it,
Okay.
correct?
I'm sorry?
So they're filing directly onto the title so that
Right, there's an agreement or a declaration that we would prepare that would be recorded against the property as well, where the owner says, I understand that I have to occupy, and if I don't, so on and so forth.
Well, my concern, honestly, as a real estate broker, is full disclosure to my clients. So I want to know that we're going to be aware, so we can tell those buyers or sellers pretty much what we're doing. I'm sure Chairman Nicewinder have the same concerns for the same reasons. So
Very good questions.
Okay, any other questions of staff?
I did have one. Does any of this address new development of these units like we had talked about earlier in other meetings? Somebody having acreage and wanting to put multiple units on them? This doesn't
Well,
address any of that.
One of the criteria,
guess
one
that's
of the points
county.
of
Okay.
this
I
is that
didn't
it has to be a single family
This
dwelling.
is the only thing that's addressing that.
and you can only build one, if I remember before. It
Yes.
said you can only build one structure.
You can't buy,
You can't build multiple.
you can't buy
But
the
if
But
land.
that's
did come
inside
in
city limits, right? Because if acreage, that falls under county jurisdiction, and maybe the
Well,
county,
they'd have their own rules and
they
regs.
have their
This
own
is
rules.
only-
Yeah, that's what,
That's correct.
Okay, so only in the
Only in
single
the
family.
city limits,
in the
correct.
city
Somebody would-
limits.
Quarter acre in town can't go plop.
They gotta
up
follow
4
the
or
county
5.
regulations, whatever they may be.
Well, what if that's in the city, within the city limits? Some
The ordinance
quarter acre
only
lots.
applies to R1 zones.
R1 zoning,
Yeah.
so that would be addressed individually with that with that developer if he wanted to do that then.
When
That's a whole different story then.
When they come in to
Certainly.
pull the permit, staff checks, it's a single family
I
dwelling,
understand that.
or R1.
Yeah, I understand
can
it's
only put one
R1,
unit.
but I'm looking to the future. If somebody has a quarter acre in town, just like in the Bay Area, they're putting these things stacked up on a
They
quarter
can only
acre.
put one per lot.
Okay, but if somebody wants to,
They can only put one per lot.
if it's not zoned R1 though, can they do
If it's not
something
zoned
else?
R1, then they
No.
can't put one, period.
Okay, so we're cleaning that, we're just taking that off the table, nobody can do that then. Okay,
Right.
that's what I wanted to make
Yes,
sure,
sir.
that we're not able to do that, or someone is not able to do that.
Yeah, it's only allowed for an R1 section, so in that instance, you'd be talking about multiple families and things of that nature, so it wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay.
I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about this, but this is new enough, and we're still hammering away here. I don't know that at this point in time, I'm comfortable entertaining a motion to forward this on to the council without a chance for another meeting and possibly another venue to encourage the public to come in and give comments and suggestions. How does this appeal to staff?
We are encouraging and interested in public's feedback as well as refining the draft with your board. So completely concur and expected a subsequent hearing to solicit further input.
Would you folks would you consent to continuing to work on this, to
Yes.
polish it? And also, we'll have staff and legal give us a little more feedback if they come across something new or something, another angle to look at.
Are we are we under any kind of time restrictions or?
I don't
Deadlines or-
I don't believe we are.
Mr. Chairman, I would only suggest to the commission, because this matter was noticed as a public hearing and it was published in the Selma Enterprise, it may be prudent, so that we don't have to go through that exercise again and the cost, for you to open the public hearing, entertain any comments from any members of the public that are present, and then continue the public hearing to the next planning commission meeting.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, staff. Does anyone wish to step forward and comment on this proposal?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you open the public go through the formal process of opening the public hearing at this
Okay,
time.
I'm gonna open the public, for public comment. Does anyone wish to come forward and speak on the, agenda item? It has to do with auxiliary dwelling units. Step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Don Kraustup, and my home is 1333 Chestnut Street here in Selma. And I hate to show my lack of intelligence, but I want to just simplify this. If I understand, my home is located on a lot that is 108 feet wide and 140 feet deep, and we are limited to the size of the home that can be put on it. Are we saying now that I can build another home on that to rent out? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, that's correct, but there is a limited square footage, which that second floor
To-
unit can.
As I understand it, the square footage is limited to 1/2 of the square feet in the home that I have.
Correct. Up
Which,
to a maximum of 1,200.
okay, but that would just about fit mine. I would hate to see my neighbor build a home half the size of his home, which is the same as mine, on his back lot. It destroys the value of our property.
Yes, the objective as handed down by the state is,
I'm sorry,
the objective of the ordinance as prescribed by the state legislature is to facilitate options for additional housing units for family members or even not family members due to that ongoing housing crisis throughout the state. So it's not expected that everybody will submit applications to request an accessory dwelling unit, but for the genuine need and the appropriate lots, that option is available to the property owners. And studies have shown that there's no depreciation in property value by allowing a accessory dwelling unit on an appropriately sized lot.
a part of our shortage of housing is price. Anyway, I thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak about this agenda item? Does anyone wish to speak against it? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you just simply continue the public hearing to our next meeting, which I believe would be in September 24th, if I'm not mistaken.
Calendar's right there.
Correct.
Oh, there we go. So I would just ask that you continue the public hearing to September 24th.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second agenda item, submittal number 2018-32, a conditional use permit, and it's a CEQA categorical act exemption. And this is from the Community Development Department. The applicant is Salinas Recycling, owner Sonny Salinas. Staff, do you have anything for us on this?
Yes, Salinas Recycling has been operating a recycling facility on this site in this location. The applicant is now requesting to significantly upgrade the operations and improve a portion of this unimproved site to expand the operations but on the same site. There are requirements for subsequent approvals of site plan review and a signage permit if applicable. At this time, we're requesting Planning Commission's consideration of the conditional use permit only.
Any questions of staff?
I have a question on page 5 of the plan. It it says that there's gonna be a parking area that's gonna have AC paving, but then there's also a dirt area and an area that has, recycled AC paving. Is that road base?
That is gonna be determined at the site plan review stage. The actual paving is going to be reviewed and approved by the engineering department for material and compaction ability. So while you do have questions on this preliminary site plan, this has been submitted as far as the conditional use permit request is concerned. There will be a formal submittal for site plan review subsequent to the conditional use permit.
When they increase the size of this recycling center, it's gonna obviously increase the traffic. And I'd prefer that the cars were not making dust, especially since the prevailing wind will blow it directly towards the mobile home park that is behind it. So I was just curious if that was gonna be required to be completely paved.
Of course, and that is, once again, the requirement of site plan review and part of the site plan review process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you, staff. I'm gonna open the public portion. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this application? If so, please step forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is George Kasla. I am the owner of the Selma Plaza, which was next to it. You know, their building will be with my building. I have a couple of questions, you know. Right now, when you check the police record, the homeless people, what they do, they go into our trash cans, collecting the cans, going to the recycle center, get some money, going to liquor store, and laying down all over. This is a circle. How many times I called police because I caught them urinating, I'm repeating, urinating the property, our property all over, by the bank and stuff, you know. And yes, if city council around to do it, let them build the bathrooms. You know, other thing is when you go at the, I also live at the trailer park. That's never ever we have so much flies. What I notice that this area is open. They proposing to put a chain link fence, right? But you know, like after when you have a party at home with human, next morning when you have to clean it up, it's kind of, you know, it stinks, you know, the beer or so. That's what brings the flies, you know. And this is, if somebody want to build, I'm not against any business. Let the people, God bless them, do. I know I am a business guy. If they're going to build something which is enclosed, right, as a bathroom, everything, ventilation system, that's, we're talking different way. This looks like they moved this because they were in one spot, they moved in a little bit further. This looks like when you do when you have a remodeling area, when your contractor comes, brings a couple of containers, you know, they dumping everything. It's ugly. It's ugly. I bought the shopping center, you know, and I'll do everything to make it. I'm going step by step, you know, painting the building to make it nice. And the corner, you know, this is the owners for the trailer park. They can tell, they can, you know, tell also about this. It's not that I'm against, I don't want it, but I don't want, first of all, the smell, you know, it's all over. What it brings, you can take a data from the police department. How many times the police was today. They were arresting them, you know, and when I asked them, when the police asked them what they're doing, oh, we were working a little bit for recycle center, so they gave us a couple bucks. There you go, goes like that. And I'm not here to chase people, you know. Yes, if they want to build something, this is recycle center. Let have a roof, you know, vent, everything. It's different. God bless them. I don't have a problem with it, but to put a couple storage containers and stuff, this is, how to say, doesn't look nice for my property, doesn't look nice for the trailer park, it doesn't look nice for Selma. You know, I bought the property. The reason was when I drove around, God, I said, what a nice houses, what a pride of ownership. That's what made me to come here, you know. And then I saw this, you know, the owners, they came to me to rent the spot to get the recycle center. I said, no. You know, the reason was because I don't want the homeless, you know, and that's the main problem. And the flies are going, you know, especially when it's hot right now, when you see the beers, everything for next day, people bring it, right? It's, man. So that's, you know, if I may ask, you know, let them build, let them have one, but it has to have a restroom, right? And the roof, so everything can be closed, you know. Then we can fight with it, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this project? Please step forward and state your name and address.
Hi, good evening. My name is Liliana Lisotti. Sorry, my English is not too good. I'm the owner for the Salinas Recycling, and we are over there about over 10 years. Okay, we never have problem with the neighborhood, no with the police, and nothing. So over there is a problem, I recognize is a problem with two homeless. Okay, they are around. The police can do nothing. Okay, period. They see they are no in violation, so the police no can take them. The problem here is I not take from them. I know it's a problem right now, so we no buy from them from November the last year. The main problem here is Mr. Kosla, okay, is the laundry room, okay, one of them work over there. The liquor store, the same. And the big market, okay, they pay to clean it up all the back, so the dock over there for the trucks. So are people from them who are paying. So the security guard, your security right now, he's buying crack from those homeless. I don't know if you know or no. And today,
Would you speak to the commission,
oh,
please?
I'm sorry. And today we found that the security guard, okay, throw garbage in the container is for glass. So I don't have problem with Mr. Corla and no with the property, okay? We have homeless too, okay, they are in the zone, okay, we can do nothing. The police no help us to take it out. It's no shelter in Selma, but it's no reason to close a business for two homeless. This is a community program, okay? The state of California is the law right now for CRV container, and another reason is the property, the owners for the supermarket right now had to pay, if we left, they had to pay $100 a day for no have a recycling center in the zone. Why? Because you buy your water, okay, you pay 5 cents, and you have the right to come to my business, for example, or a recycling center, and take your money back. So the market right now are in big trouble if we going to leave to the zone because they have to pay 45,000. Each one is a tree market that qualify for that. They had to pay $45,000 a year, each one. So I think it's no reason to close a business for two homeless. I think we have to work together and take it out, those people out. If we know, if the police no help us, I don't know how, but we know how to pay, they know how to help us, they know how to help to the next property. And it's it. I think it's very easy, okay? For the container, smell and everything, I also recognize sometimes people bring, okay, not only the cans, also the beer and all the stuff is over there, but I think can never have problem with that. It's fly. In my house, I don't have a recycling center, and I have fly everywhere. So I don't know if it come from my business also in my house. I live in Sengar, so it's another concern. Okay, it's no problem. For the bathroom, I don't know. I had to have a public bathroom. It's a ordinance or something like that. I had to put a bathroom for the homeless around. I don't think so. But
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
thank you so much, sir.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this project?
My name is still Don Krauskup at 1333 Chestnut Street. Anyway, I am also a 50% owner of McCall Village Mobile Home Park, not trailer park. As I understand this, the recycling facility will be behind what they call the dollar store, which is in that commercial center that adjoins our park. And my first thought is noise, and it does not seem like if it's behind the dollar store, which I understand, and there is an opening there between our park and the commercial center, and it's got to create a lot of noise, I would think. Thank you.
Right now, no, we have 100 feet. Is the difference right now from where
Does
we are
anyone else
before
wish to
and
speak
now?
in favor or against?
I'm in favor, no. Recycling centers are all around us.
State your name and address for the record.
Michael McHenry.
Thank you.
2405 Country Club Lane, Selma. Recycling centers are all around us. They're pretty simple, but they don't put them where there's 350 people on one side and a whole bunch of people buying things on the other side. That's just not what happens. You see them out in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this project? Anyone in opposition? At this point, I'm going to close the public portion of this hearing. I do have some questions for staff based on the property owner's complaints about hygiene habits of certain individuals in this community. Have you got any solutions off the top of your head?
The complaints that are being voiced have to do with the existing operation, which is a older facility which was not approved pursuant to a site plan. That facility which has generated the complaints is being closed. The new facility is being located on the same site, but adjacent to the roadway, and includes significant site improvements, including a perimeter fence, whereby vagrants will not be able to access the site after hours, and the proposed hours of operation, I believe, are 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So while those complaints with respect to the existing operation may be correct, the site plan review will be processed in a manner to prevent those issues from occurring at the new location on the same site.
What can we do to mitigate the concerns about dust, noise, and pest control, that type of thing. What can we put some, I don't mean to be spitting in this, can we put some, controls on this? Or some conditions that, these have to be a workable plan for everybody. I wanna see everybody get along together. I don't wanna see the trailer park or their, people suffering. I don't wanna see the recycling people suffering unnecessarily, and I don't wanna see the property owner upset. But there has to be some medium ground here where everybody can, they may even have to help each other a little bit to kind of fine tune things. But it's important to me that they keep the pest control down, keep the odor down, the dust, the noise. And if we have to, we'll make conditions in here that if that's not, if they can't come up with a workable plan, then we just can't allow the CUP.
Yes, there will be subsequent to the CUP approval, and the CUP will include standard conditions, including hours of operation, maintaining a cleanly site, well lit at times of operating hours, at times of darkness, safety conditions, fire department conditions, and even subsequent to the CUP conditions of approval, there will be a site plan review as well. So between the CUP approval, conditions of approval, and the site plan review, and site plan review conditions of approval, we're looking at a improved site that has very little potential to generate the type of complaints that the original site did.
Okay, are these, do we need to add some conditions to this effect? Or will we do that when we do the site plan review?
The resolution, we have resolutions attached to the CUP approval. Fire Department, Section 5. Planning Department, Building and Safety, and General Conditions. Starting on page 11 of the resolution.
So you're gonna bring this back to us under a site plan review?
Yes.
And at that point,
Pardon me. No, site plan review is ministerial,
okay,
but it will be circulated throughout the city departments for comments, which means building and safety, planning, engineering, fire, and police will also comment on the site plan as well as the CUP, which is.
I have a question,
Would
please.
you,
'cause-
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
if I may-
sir.
Excuse me.
No.
If it is the commission's interest in having provisions in there with regard to dust, noise, and pest control, then certainly we can put that in and bring this back for your further consideration at the next meeting.
well, I was gonna ask if, staff could work with the applicant and based on our concerns, dust, odor, noise, pest control, and possibly have a conference with the police department about, some of the two-legged pests. Can we continue this to a later meeting? I'd like to see a more workable plan that I'm comfortable with.
And
Oh.
I would like actually to see where would they be storing those recyclable until they're processed? Because I agree with the owners that are living next door. Containers, once they sit, none of us wash their recycling material before putting it in the recycling to sell it or whatever. So definitely there's gonna be odors when they sit there. So I think if we are allowing a facility like this right next to a residential area, there should be something that we impose on the owners to control odor and, pests that would come from these kind of things being stored there, for an extended period of time until they're removed or processed or whatever it is.
And we can spell out how those concerns will be addressed. It should be noted that the new location on the existing site is well set back from the R3 zone. Also, if you look at plan sheet, plan view, page 5, It's identifying the location of the on-site containers, and the containers are enclosed, meaning that odor is limited. That's sheet number 5, identifying location of storage containers, and number 6, showing the new location of the recycling facility site, which is set back at the far northeast corner of the site, whereas the R3 zone is approximately 300 feet to the south.
I think it's closer. Is it moving closer
I
to
think
the
he's,
mobile homes?
I think he's referring to the apartment complex is what he's referring to.
Thank you.
R3 zone.
There we go. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? I have 2 people in the public that want to speak. I'm going to reopen the public portion. Step forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Don Krauskop, 1333 Chestnut Street here in Selma, and I am a 50% owner of McCall Village Mobile Home Park, which is next to this shopping center. Even if you get something that says that we are going to control pests, we're going to control noise, etc., once this is built and the noise is still there, the insects are still there, etc., it's virtually impossible for anyone, city or whatever, to do anything. And usually it's just overlooked. Thank you.
Sandy Nicewander, 2474 Country Club Lane. My concern is you're talking about a site plan review. Why wasn't that site plan review done and finalized before a recommendation was made to the Planning Commission, so that those concerns could have been incorporated into a working document to be presented to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the City Council? Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to reclose the public portion and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
So that was continuation to the September 24th meeting. Got it. Thank you.
I
I
agree,
would-
honestly. We need more information than this before granting the CUP.
I would
so-
feel more comfortable if we had a little more enlightening plan as to what these folks need to know what's gonna be expected of them. The property owner needs to know what he's looking at, and the surrounding neighbors need to have I think, a better idea of what's gonna go on. I'm certainly, concerned, like Mr. Krauskop pointed out, that once this thing is up and running,
Right.
then it can get real dicey as far as shutting it down because they're not meeting all the conditions.
Right, especially after investing all that money, I mean, telling somebody.
Yeah. So if it's appropriate at this point in time, could I have a motion and a second to continue this to the September 24th meeting?
I make a motion that we continue this item to the September 24th meeting.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's done.
It's another point que maybe you can
Mr.
consider.
Chairman,
um,
moved on
The
the
state
matter.
de
We're no
California.
longer,
back-
we're
she
no
can come
longer
back
on
on
this.
September
Come back
24th.
September 24th. We're gonna continue it till then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the property owned or leased? Like, do they lease the location where they're doing the
Yes.
recycling?
Bruce,
or-
that would be a
Okay, I
question of
just-
staff.
Yes, and we have a copy of the rental agreement signed by the property owner
And that property is zoned for this kind of,
with the conditional use permit approval, yes.
Okay,
you.
agenda item number 3, submittal number 2018-0241. It's a conditional use permit. Could we hear from staff, please?
Yes, the applicant is seeking to occupy a retail space within the Selma Plaza that is currently vacant, to allow for a adult care facility that will require state approval, a license from the California Department of Social Services, as well as a certification from the Fresno County Environmental Health Department. There will be a building permit issuant for tenant improvements. However, the use as proposed is permitted within the Selma Plaza retail commercial space pursuant to a conditional use permit approval. On that topic, in addition to the information you have in front of you, I've also got from the applicant a brochure of the proposed facility. Can I bring this to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Richard, is this gonna be like a daycare center or?
Thanks.
It is for adults suffering from post-traumatic stress as well as traumatic brain injuries. It is a state licensed facility, and there appears to be a significant need for these services within the community. It is located within the community services zone, and as such is fulfilling the objectives of the general plan as far as providing community services. However, there are certain criteria that have to be met both at the state, county, and local level. But at this time, we are requesting the board's consideration of the request for conditional use permit.
I see one of their services they're offering is number 10, equine therapy. We're gonna have horses out there?
No, not on the site. There will be field trips associated with it.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly in agreement that this community in particular can use this type of facility. Will it occupy the entire building?
Yes, they've provided a preliminary floor plan. However, much more sophisticated floor plans will be required by Building and Safety for the tenant improvement permit. Those plans will be circulated to the departments for review and comment as well. Page number 5 identifies the conceptual floor plan for the commercial space. The site is well serviced by 2 improved arterial roads and plenty of on-site parking. There is no issue with the site's capacity to support the use.
What is the maximum number of full-time residents?
That is identified in the description. The expectation is, staff report, there we are. $42 patients per day is the expectation.
That would be 42 maximum?
There would be 42 residents sleeping there.
Oh, they will live on site?
Yeah.
They would be coming in, referred to as
Please state your name and address for the record.
Richard Nault, 13949 Hargan Way, Auburn. A portion of this is an adult day healthcare, which is in a way close to a senior center. The difference is we provide psychological and medical checks on them when they come in. So we provide pickup and delivery to them. So transportation's provided. There would be 30 people in that section of the building. That's open 6 hours a day. So when they come in, they get lunch. Their vitals are taken. And if there's any cognitive issues, there's cognitive programs that we would be providing. The other section of the building is for vets between the ages of 22 and 59 that are dealing with PTS and are having behavioral issues at home. And if their psychologist or counselor recommends that they come in, they would be coming in for 30 days at a time. At the end of 30 days, they would be reevaluated, and they may stay for 4 or 5 months, depending on how they're progressing.
Okay, just for the record, I have opened the public portion. Continue, please.
Okay. So we will have canine and equine therapy for these young vets. These are people that are dealing with sleep disorders, nightmares, sweats, loss of memory, and a lot of this is showing that these young vets, if they're not treated, are getting early Alzheimer's and early dementia in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so our program is pushing away from the just here's some pills, go home and take them, and trying to put them into a more holistic program. We were back in Washington 3 years ago meeting with the Office of Innovative Compassion, and they said, we don't have these, but would you be willing to do them all over the country? And there's such a need. The VA is showing 926,000 vets that have PTS. And then you also have the traumatic brain injuries. And if they have a TBI and they go into the VA does not have a place for them to stay. So what happens is they're giving medication and they're sent home. So the TBI could be up different hours of the night. Our staffing for 40 people or 42 people would be 14 people during the day, 10 in the evening, and 6 at night. So this counselor's there all night long if they wake up and they're having issues.
Any questions?
Are they free to come and go as they please?
No, they're not. If they're coming in for 30 days and they want to go out for a walk, then a mental health technician will be with them. Family can come in to visit them. This comes all under state guidelines.
So, just out of curiosity, why not put this facility closer, for example, to Lemoore Base or something where there's more young vets that are in need? Like, why Selma versus other cities?
Well, we're locating them in 5 different locations in Arizona. I mean, Yuma is one of them, Sierra Vista, downtown Phoenix. There's just no reason to have them close to the VA hospital because the VA doesn't really treat them. And a lot of these vets are not on the VA program. A lot of these vets don't want to go to the VA.
No, I understand, but what made you choose Selma in particular? We're not a big city. I'm sure in the valley we have other big cities around us that have more people. So why did you choose Selma?
Well, we're
For your
working
location.
with Mr. Colza on his facility, and
Oh.
he's working with us on another facility. And so he said this would be really good for Selma because these are very high-paying jobs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this application?
This is new to me. Excuse me. My name is Don Krauskup, 1333 Chestnut Street. And I have a question. Are these people going to be people that are pretty much confined to the building, or are they people who will be out moving around and moving in the area?
That's a question that we'll have to have answered by the gentleman who just spoke. Is that your only comment, your only
Yes,
question?
that's for now.
Okay, thank you. Can you answer Mr. Krauskup's question,
Yes,
please?
the answer to that is, I think I did answer it. No, they're not allowed to wander through the community. They're in here for treatment. They get 3 hours of therapy a day, and that's spread out in group therapy and individual therapy. And then a major portion of the rest of the day is cognitive programs. That's where the equine therapy and the canine therapy comes in. And if they are taken off-site for the equine therapy, we have to record who's taking them, how long did they spend there, what kind of progress did they make with that horse, and what time did they return to the facility. So they're not free to wander the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this project? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public portion. Richard, did you have something else you need or want to add?
No request for clarification. The findings have been made for the CUP, and everything is clear with respect to the applicant's intention, the applicant's complete, and it's simply for your consideration at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm ready for a discussion or a motion.
The wellness center title sounds like a metaphor for mental health facility to me. That if we're having an inpatient resident who is receiving mental health services, that's a hospital situation, not a shopping center situation.
Seems like putting it in a retail shopping center is kind of odd. To me, it seems like it's in an odd location. but-
Well, as the gentleman pointed out, he's working with the property owner, and that's a big building. It's been vacant for quite a while.
That's where the county used to be, right?
It sounds like they're trying to cover all their avenues. If anybody goes out of the building, they're accompanied by a certified nurse or whatever. Basically, I don't know whereabouts in Selma they could go at this point in time to get a like-size structure. It's at one end of this shopping center. It's not in the middle of it.
So once the program is complete, are they like evaluated if they need more hours? Are they left alone?
Well, to do,
Are we gonna, as a community, deal with those individuals like,
I believe
you
he
know,
answered
when-
that question a while ago when he said there's gonna be 42 people, there's 14 employees taking care of these individuals during the day. Some
No,
of
I
these,
meant
some of these people
after.
that are there, once they complete their 30 days,
right,
then I would imagine they would either go home or, I'm not sure what the program is. Let me reopen
They
the
don't
public
necessarily-
portion, and could you
They would-
enlighten us?
Yes, when they're completed their program, they return to their families. You know, some of these people could be coming from out of state. Somebody put it on their Facebook page that we were doing one in another city in Arizona, and our website got 748 hits that night. The following day, we got a call from a woman in Washington State, and she said, my husband doesn't talk, he just sits and watches TV, doesn't sleep at night, could you take him? We got almost the exact same call from a woman in New Jersey who said, my husband has PTSD and I don't know what to do. I'm up half the night with him. I'm really stressed. Could you take him? And then what happens is that they're returned home.
thank you. Honestly, I'm all for our veterans who defend us and put their life on the line for us to get all the help they need. My only concern is us as a community, we don't want to deal with unsolved problems that were left if these people are released and they're not ready, or they just decide to break out and go out on their own. We have another facility right now in Selma that was originally brought with all the good intentions. That's all what it's doing right now, increasing our homeless problems. Originally, it was brought in as supposedly a solution, and it ended up being a problem. So I'm just hoping that this would not be a similar situation.
No, we don't deal with homeless,
Okay,
and we don't deal with detox.
okay,
So if someone is having a detox issue, they have to go to a detox center to have this taken care of. There's we have comps for 52 facilities. We had our secretary call 32 of them and said, would you take a vet? And the answer was no. The reason is the VA doesn't pay that much. And we're exclusively for low income and veterans.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? I'm going to reclose the public portion. And I'm ready for a motion or whatever. I don't really, as many of these institutions as they have online up and running already, I'm pretty confident that they know what they're doing. And they're not gonna just say, okay, your 30 days are up, there's the door.
Yeah, that's.
There's obviously concerned family members that are gonna be there to pick them up if they're being discharged. And I'm sure they have alternate treatment centers if this one doesn't fit a particular individual's needs. So I don't really have any reservations about putting this where it is, simply because it's way out there on the end of the commercial zone. I really don't have a problem with it.
All right.
So, can I have a motion?
I made all the motions tonight, so someone has to.
This type of facility is sorely needed.
It is.
I have former students who have sent me emails and corresponded with me in other ways, describing their experiences and how their life has changed, mostly for the negative, because of PTSD and TBIs. I mean, I guess my only concern is that I don't think is the retail situation. It's a retail shopping center, and I cannot think of another retail shopping center that I've been to that has this type of facility in it.
No, but I think we have
The,
mixed-use retail shopping
Yeah,
centers,
just like
like where
the
they put
new-
bars.
the new health center going right there in front
Right,
of.
and United
uh,
Health Center.
Yeah, that's
So
going in
it's
the
not
shopping center there
unusual,
too.
because it's not a full hospital, I guess, to
Well,
see it in a
here's the
retail.
other thing to keep in mind. This is gonna involve a conditional use permit. And if the conditions for that use aren't met, then it comes to a screeching halt till the conditions are met. So the fact that it's a retail outlet, I don't really think enters into it, because once people understand what it is, they're just gonna go on down farther down and get what they want.
Yeah, they consulted the other tenants in the.
If you wanna
shopping
base it on that, then why are we even considering a recycling center and a retail
I'd
center?
rather see that in a manufacturing zoning,
Right,
personally.
that,
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Well,
one
it
makes
should
more
be.
sense for recycling to me.
But, I guess we've about beat this horse to death. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve conditional, which one is it? Make a motion for resolution of planning commission for,
Just read
doesn't
that
have a
one.
number. Okay, resolution of the planning commission, City of Selma, California, making findings and approving conditions, conditional use permit, number 2018-0241 for the establishment of operation of community-based adult service center known as Diversified Wellness Center of Selma at 3830 McCall Avenue, Selma, California, 93662. Notice of exemption regarding same. It's all together is why I thought it was kind of weird.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Will staff inform the applicant?
Yes, we will.
And do we have anything on the director's report? We already made the introductions.
There's nothing to report this time.
Okay, under oral communications, at this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any items not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Seeing no comment, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we all go home
Can I have
for
a
the
second?
night.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, committee members.
I want to thank you all.